Hi, everyone. This is the 50 States Highpointing podcast and YouTube channel. What started off as a project for a communications class has turned into something that I actually love doing. I have the privilege of providing the platform for people to talk about the extraordinary things they do in the outdoors. Highpointing is the challenge of reaching the highest elevation in each of the 50 states. Highpointers don't get paid for their hobby. No one is sponsored by an outdoor company, and people fit this challenge into their everyday lives that also include careers and family. I found through these interviews that people who attempt this challenge are incredible and genuinely enjoy talking about their experiences. If you consider yourself a highpointer and you want to share your story on this podcast or interview, please send me an email at 50stateshighpointingpodcast@gmail.com. It has been a pleasure speaking with every highpointer. I hope you enjoy. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 50 States Highpointing podcast. I'm your host, Lauren, and today we're talking with Tim Sr. and Tim Jr. from Indiana. Welcome.
Good to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got started in the outdoors and then what got you highpointing?
Well, both of us are Eagle Scouts, and so it was through scouting that we spent a lot of time in our youth camping, hiking, swimming, exploring, learning outdoor skills, and so forth. So being out in the outdoors is something that we both enjoy. We have a great time with it. And so making the transition to highpointing wasn't that difficult for us. We already had a desire to do it, and it was just a matter of just acting on it.
Wow. So did you know that there was a highpointing club, or did you know that highpointing was a thing, or did you just kind of stumble upon it?
So I'm a big fan of like geography, and way back in elementary school, there was this project that we did about the state of Indiana, and so it was everything like, here's the different geographical areas that we have in the state, how the southern part of the state is a little bit more hilly, the northern part of the state is a little bit more flat. But the highest point in the state was Hoosier Hill out in eastern Indiana, where it's really flat, but it ends up being pretty high in elevation. And so I'd always wanted to go to this specific place, but I just never done it. So finally, like at end of senior high school, we were able to finally just go explore it. So
I think an interesting part of that is just prior to doing that, a couple months earlier, I fell out of a tree and I broke all kinds of bones. I was in the hospital for 3.5 weeks. Wow. And I was recovering from this. So that happened. I did that early in May. I think our trip was sometime in July. And I wasn't very mobile. But Tim wanted to go someplace, and I had been pent up for essentially a couple months. So I was able to get in a car, and he said, it's flat, we can just go there. And it really was. It was at the edge of a cornfield. He just walked about 30 feet into a clump of woods, and there it was. There was a picnic table and a mailbox and a little rock that said Hoosier High Point on it. And so your dad was able to very slowly walk to Hoosier High Point. And then Tim says, hey, Dad, Ohio's High Point is only 2 hours from here. So we get back in the car and drive another 2 hours into Ohio. And again, it was just a matter of that one was on a hill in a community college campus, which used to be a NORAD station during World War II, and so or during the Cold War. So all I had to do again was get out of the car and walk about 30 feet to be at the high point of Ohio. So that was our humble beginnings, and then fever kind of set in, and we just kind of, let's go do another one and another one. We were only going to go to Hoosier High Point. So it really started innocently as something for me to kind of get out and him to go to Hoosier High Point, and that's kind of how the whole thing started. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, that is really unique. And I have to say, Hoosier Hill or Hoosier High Point is probably the coolest high point name in all of the states. It's just so uniquely Indiana.
There's nothing that describes Indiana more than having the high point literally on the edge of the cornfield. I only live about 18 miles from there now. Because after college, I ended up moving out to near Richmond. And so once every 2 weeks, I'll go up there just to check on the high point, clear out like any brush that might be there. But there's literally like the cornfield, and then there's like a cow farm right near there. So it smells like Indiana. It smells like Indiana. It's pure Indiana. So,
oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
So you started then in the Midwest. You kind of branched out from Indiana. What was after Ohio?
Was it Christmas time?
Yeah, we went to Missouri, then down to Arkansas, down to I believe Louisiana, and then we went to Alabama, and then we went to Mississippi. When we went to Alabama's High Point, it was right before New Year's.
Yeah.
And they got the turkey drop there or something.
Yeah, instead of a ball dropping from New York down a skyscraper, there's this tower that actually sits over the Hoosier High Point. So we're there, at Alabama, that's right. So we're there, and they have a bonfire there. There's all kinds of people around there, and their big thing was on a zip line to send a frozen turkey down from the top of the tower down to where all the people were. And we don't have to make this stuff up. I mean, it really happened.
Yeah.
In case you forgot where you were in Alabama.
Right. So we did that, and then we did Mississippi was the last one, and then after that, I believe we went to Nashville, and there's this place there called the Old Spaghetti Factory, and we love it, and it's around the United States, and so we went to the Old Spaghetti Factory, and by the time you get to Nashville, you're only 3.5 hours away from here, and so we'll just come back, and that was it for our first trip. But it was a fantastic trip.
What we try to do is look at the geography, the weather, his time that he can get away from school, and so what we would do is here in the east, a lot of these high pointers are a lot closer, these high points, than out west. So we would look at his schedule. Okay, hey, we've got 6 days or 5 days or whatever, and it's December. We could still do high pointing, so we just went south. And we did the same thing like for Thanksgiving. And I don't know some of the other ones, but we go out, and if you look at a map of the United States, a lot of these high points are somewhat like clusters.
Yeah.
So you can go to a particular place and knock out a few of them in a relatively quick time. And that's what we kind of did. We didn't try to set the world on fire, but we would do 10, 12 in a year, at least initially. Something like that.
Your favorite high point in the Midwest, I'm going to guess, was Hoosier Hill.
So in terms of like the Midwest, if we were to include like Kentucky, I really like Kentucky's High Point. Because it sits on top of what they say is a mining area that could collapse. So, Black Mountain, Kentucky's High Point, it's right on the border with Virginia. So when you go to drive the car up, you can either cross over from Virginia and immediately turn left, or come over the top from Kentucky and immediately turn right. And so it's a nice cultural experience around there with coal country. But then also, too, as you're walking up to the high point, you go past a FAA en route radar drone, where they're tracking flights everywhere, and that's how they're controlling everything. But then when you get to the top of Black Mountain, either the public TV station somewhere around there has a plaque that talks about the uses of Black Mountain in terms of getting television coverage to any of the communities surrounding there. And it says here's a high point. So it's really neat. I've heard that it's either maybe like the Kentucky State Parks Department or someone over there is looking to I wouldn't say like revitalize the high point, but they're going to change around some features and make it a little bit more accessible. So that'll be pretty neat to see what happens with that. So,
cool.
That's my favorite. What's your favorite?
God, they're all unique. They're all very different.
Yeah,
they really are. And I could probably say something right now, and then a day or two from now, I'd probably say something different. But they all really neat. And I think one of the neat things about going to the high points was we made it a cultural experience as well. So it wasn't just about going to the top of this mountain or the top of that mountain. We've been to the Naval Academy. We've been to the Air Force Academy. We've been to all kinds of historical places. We went to a baseball game at Wrigley Field, and we went to one at Fenway Park. We probably snuck into 4 or 5 different college football stadiums and just ran around on the fields. So we would do this type of stuff as we were going to the next places, and I think it kept things very interesting for us. It wasn't always go climb, go climb, go climb.
Yeah.
It was a matter of spending time together as a father and son, just doing some fun things that we both enjoyed, with the ultimate goal, though, of getting to the different high points.
For sure. You're creating an experience and then you're achieving goals along the way.
Yeah.
Wow. So let's move out east then. Can you talk about those peaks?
Yeah, as far as like New England goes, some are relatively easy. And one, like for instance, Mount Marcy in New York, I left a toenail up there. It was, God, it was up, down, up, down, up, down. It was just a series. It was a trail cut through vegetation that had all these glacial blocks on it. It was almost like a 2 or 3 foot, a 1 or 2 foot block. All the way up, you had to step up, step down, step up, step down, whether you're going up or going down the mountain. And so I kept jamming my toe into the toe of my boot, and somewhere there's a toenail, and that's one of the most unique ones. But then I think Connecticut is also a very unique one.
Yeah.
Tim, you want to talk about that one?
Yeah, so quite literally Connecticut, it's right on the state line, on the slope of a mountain that's taller that goes into Massachusetts.
Yes.
So quite literally just go to it, and it's this little tiny pole that's just sticking out, and that's the high point. And it's just very interesting with the fact that, okay, like you can go up to it, but then if you go a little bit past it and start going down, then I believe you get to the tri-point of New York, Connecticut, and Massachusetts. And so, side note, so like when we go to like a bunch of these high points, if there's a tri-point that's close enough, we'll go to it. I know we'll probably cover this later, but like when we were out doing like Nebraska, the tri-point for Wyoming, Nebraska, and Colorado is I don't know, probably 800 meters away, and then the tri-point for Colorado, Kansas, and Nebraska is not too far away from that as well. Near like Mount Sunflower area and stuff like that. But yeah, as far as Connecticut goes, like we did that, and then we found a lake that was nearby. That we didn't know it was part of like a homeowners association or not. We're just like, wow, it's a really hot day. Like, there's a place to park, and we just went and jumped in, and someone came out there like, what are you guys doing here?
Yeah, we got booted out.
And you're like, we're high pointers.
You understood, but they're like, no, you guys can't just jump in here. So, but that was on the trip that we did in New England. Everything from New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, all the way up to Maine and New Hampshire and Vermont. We all did that as part of a trip. And then at the end of the trip, we went to like Boston and went to Fenway Park for a game. But when we did, I'd say probably the best one out of all of them that I enjoyed the most was when we did Maine. Because Maine, unless you're spending the night in the park, you're not allowed to enter the park until like 6 a.m. on a certain morning. So we came all the way up to the gate as soon as 6 a.m. Opened. Then they opened up the gate, and we went and found parking and started climbing up. But it definitely reminded me of a really nice just wilderness experience as you're hiking up, and then you get onto the saddle, and then you see the top of the mountain, but you still gotta, maneuver your way up there, and then you get to the top and you reach the northern terminus of the Appalachian Trail, but then also to the highest point in Maine. We had a little bit of cloud coverage that came down, so we ended up being in the clouds a little bit, but that was definitely like a really neat experience being able to enjoy that.
Yeah. Did you see any hikers on your way up to Katahdin? You did?
We actually, at the top, we met one guy who had just finished the Appalachian Trail.
Wow.
And there he was. And I'm trying to think of, well, what do you say to someone who just finished that? I mean, just the moment was. So there's probably a half dozen of us up there. So I just went and shook his hand and told him congratulations. And I'm not a park ranger. I'm not anything, but I was there to we were there just to kind of greet him and acknowledge his amazing accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate it. He was tired.
Sure.
Definitely that for sure. And even down in Virginia with Mount Rogers, the fact that you spend, you get out of your car, you start hiking, but then you connect to the Appalachian Trail and hike it for about, I think it's like 4 miles inbound to go to the high point, and then you have horses that are just kind of around everywhere. They're just like, well, this is kind of interesting for sure.
Yeah.
So, being able to at least just hike 4 miles of the Appalachian Trail, that was definitely a cool experience as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then the high point that definitely puzzles me the most is down in Florida on Britton Hill. Quite literally, it's just a park. It's flat. A couple of months ago, I was just down there on a business trip, and I was like, you know what? I want to go see if I can find the exact marker, within the park. Yeah, there's definitely like a monument that says like, "Welcome to Lakeland Park. This is the highest point of Florida." But I wanted to see like if there was like a U.S. Geological Survey marker.
Yes.
I just couldn't find one there. So
there's not. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
It's one of those places you're looking around and go, well, is it a little bit higher over there? Or is it a little bit higher over there? And you really can't tell.
Can you talk about some of your more memorable high points in the South? Now, we know about the Turkey in Alabama. Are there any other ones?
We in Louisiana, we had a little bit of trouble trying to locate it, and we were using I call Fred, our GPS that's mounted to the window, and we got a rental car and we're driving through brush, and it's kind of scratching the car a little bit and that type of stuff, and we're trying to find it. We eventually did. We probably should have asked somebody ahead of time, like, okay, well, you go over there and you take a left or whatever. But
it must have been like an old logging road or something.
Yeah,
it's like jumping in.
Wasn't well maintained at all. No. But I think as far as the South goes, I think that the neat thing about it was it's just we were there in the wintertime, and we were able to get away from the cold in Indiana and go down there and just go to places. And we went and toured the USS Alabama, Mobile. We did that. We did that. And we toured the capital of Mississippi in Jackson.
Yep.
We would kind of put these things in there. We went to we were in Tuskegee, Alabama, and we went to Morton Field where the Tuskegee Airmen first started flying.
Right.
And
that is cool.
We really were able to take advantage of some of the things. The high points, they're all easy, relatively easy. You drive really close to it. But I think some of the cultural stuff there that we were able to experience was really neat.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, that is neat. So let's talk about moving a little further west.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Now you start getting some more detail. Instead of more cultural, you get a little bit more out in the wild.
So,
take your pick.
Yeah. Okay. So farther south with like Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. What we ended up doing on that, this is gonna be good. What we ended up doing on that trip was that summer I had worked out at the Philmont Scout Ranch in northern New Mexico. It's only about maybe 2 hours away from Black Mesa over in Oklahoma. Maybe an hour and a half away from Wheeler in New Mexico. In fact, on the back side of the property, you can see directly over the valley where like Angel Fire is, and be able to see right where Wheeler is. And so I just got done working for the summer there, and so my dad picked me up, and we drove over to Wheeler. And stayed right at like the Taos Ski Valley area for the evening. The very next morning, we woke up super early and started climbing up Wheeler. Now, the cool part was, it's in the middle of the summer, but there's still little patches of snow everywhere. So we spend a little bit of time, eat some snow maybe, or, something just to cool down. As it was the sun was really starting to heat up the sky. But by the time we got to the top of Wheeler, you could see over the backside back into that valley, and there was like mountain goats and rams or something like that was there.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah.
That was our first of doing the high pointing. That was our first really big kind of like mountain experience. And my brother went along with us on that particular one. But we were really up high. We were way above the tree line. And yet we looked down, and there was an area down there that had green grass on it. And I don't know, a dozen bighorn sheep were there. And it was really, really neat to kind of see that there's still places like that on our earth, unspoiled, where natural animals can be natural and wild.
Yeah,
it was definitely a good experience there for sure. Over near Oklahoma, I didn't really realize this until this summer, but there's a tri-point right there with Oklahoma, New Mexico, and Colorado that is right near the trailhead for Black Mesa. But Black Mesa was a pretty cool experience as well. It's nice that they have the benches every mile going up there. I could definitely see how it could be like dangerous during the middle of the day if someone doesn't have like enough water or anything, and there's not a lot of canopy cover or anything like that with any trees or anything. But that was a good experience. When we started heading south in New Mexico, we went to Roswell. So it happened to be during the time the Alien Festival was going on. So you betcha, we spent a night there, and we heard about people getting abducted. We went to this,
and we met two that been abducted,
and they gave like a talk and everything about their experience.
No.
We went to the big light show that they have, like a parade at night where they turn off all the lights in the town and they light up all of the parade, mobile vehicles and everything. And you have everyone that's got abducted on this float, and they're waving and
hooping and hollering.
And then you have like American Red Cross had a float where it's like a UFO, and then they have an alien on a gurney. And they're like trying to do all sorts of stuff to him. And
they got lights shooting up to the alien.
Oh gosh!
It was a hoot, and there were like 30,000 people in town that weekend that were really into this stuff. And so, talk about a cultural experience while you're high pointing. That was the primo one.
Yeah,
that's like their Sasquatch in New Mexico.
Yeah, it was just great. And then the following day, we continued south down towards Guadalupe in Texas, and we went to Carlsbad Caverns, and so we went on like a tour in there. It felt so nice how cool it is inside compared to the heat. That was great. And then it's awesome that right past there is where Guadalupe Mountains and everything is. And so we spent the night there, and then the very next morning we hiked all the way to the top.
Man, it was hot.
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah.
Really
what time of year was that?
July, I think. Right, Alien Festivals.
Oh wow,
July. Man, it was.
That's like when people recommend you stay away. From Guadalupe National Park.
Yeah, for sure. So like that was definitely still a good experience no matter what.
We got to tell you that the top of that one has probably got the most unique object. I'm not exactly sure why, but the high point of Texas on the very top has an aluminum silver monument to American Airlines.
Yeah,
and it just doesn't compute.
No,
but there's a monument. It's so big or whatever, and it's to American Airlines. It's the highest point of Texas.
Yeah.
That's weird. That is the weirdest sponsorship.
Yeah. Up in Colorado, Nebraska, Kansas, up in Colorado, that was another like trip that we did. And when we started going up Elbert, it definitely took a good part of the day. But then when we got to the top of it, we're sitting up there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're at the very top with, I don't know, a dozen people or so forth. And one guy, 2 people had mountain bikes with him and a couple dogs, and they were going to go down the mountain. But we're up there just kind of hanging out, and then you can kind of hear this roar in the distance. And then all of a sudden, up through this canyon comes 2 fighter jets, and they're just screaming right towards us, and one does a barrel roll right over the top of us.
Wow.
All of us are just kind of looking up, wow. But that really happened. I couldn't believe it.
When you said that you heard a roar in the distance, I was like, oh no, a storm is coming through.
No, we got stories about that later.
Oh,
I think you would really enjoy Montana's High Point as well.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about this later, but like depending on whether you're coming from the north or whether you're coming from the southwest route, if you come on the southwest route, it's a famous, and this comes across the Facebook group all like so many times, where there's this famous mountain goat that will, I don't know if he's been fed over the years, but he knows where everybody's camping at. Both times that we've tried going up Montana, this mountain goat just came into camp, and then he'll look from like a ways away. But this year, when we tried going to Montana, there was a herd of mountain goats that just came near our tent area and stuff like that. But like we'll get to that in a second.
Those goats are probably saying, "Hey, there's a buffet down there."
yeah. Well, I've heard, I interviewed a guy a couple of days ago who was talking about Montana. He said that the goats would follow him as he went to the bathroom, so that they could, consume something with salt after he was done.
Oh, great.
So up in the Nebraska-Kansas area, we had went and we're like, okay, you know what? We're gonna go do the Nebraska High Point next, and we had just gotten done with Colorado. So as we're driving north from Denver, we're like, you know what? Let's stop in Cheyenne and just run by the state capitol, because we've probably done half the high points. We've probably gone to the state capital of the state, just passing through like Massachusetts, Vermont, definitely, New Mexico. The list just goes on. And so we went to the state capitol there in Cheyenne, and as we're walking around, I noticed like downstairs, down the big staircase, that there's like a group of people, and then some like, state police officers, like around the group. It looked like the group was taking a tour and looking around somewhere. So we just walked down, and then I go up to one of the officers and I said, "Hey, is that the governor over there?" Because like it was like guys all dressed up in suits, and the guy's like, "Yeah, do you want to meet him?" And I said, "Sure." And so he said, "All right, hold on, give me 1 second." Walks over and taps the guy on the shoulder and says, whatever, like, "Hey, we have some people you want to meet." And this guy comes over. It's Mark Gordon, the governor. And it's the most down-to-earth guy you can possibly think of. They're like, "Hey, like, how are you guys doing?" And we're talking about, we're just high pointers just going through. And then he mentioned that he had just done the high point of Wyoming a year or two before. And we're like, "Hey, that's so cool." And so he probably spent a good 5 minutes just talking with us, chatting with us. Now, granted, it was like not during like legislature session or anything like that. It was just like in the middle of the summer. And so, just spent a couple minutes with us, and then we all went on our ways, and like, it was like, whoa.
That, I have never heard that on this podcast before. And it's so interesting that you brought up high pointing and you knew what you were talking about.
Yeah, seriously.
He's giving us pointers and everything.
Oh my gosh. I can't believe you just said, "Hey, is that the governor?" And this response was, "Yeah, do you want to meet him?" Like, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we'll send over that photo to you. But we did that, and then later that day, we went to Nebraska, and then right next to Nebraska is where that tri-point is of Colorado, Wyoming, and Nebraska. So just drove over there real quick, visited that, and then our next stop was going to be Mount Sunflower down in Kansas. And so I said, "Hey, Dad, like there's another tri-point along the way." So he's like, "All right, like if it's not too far out of the way, we can go to it." And then so we ended up going to that one as well. And that's like way out in a cow pasture and a couple of different roads that you're not sure if they're going to be good or not. Mm-hmm. But as soon as we got down towards Kansas, their county roads are quite literally dirt. So it had just rained down one of the roads, and I was like, "Hey, I think this road's going to be good." We start driving, and we're starting to get stuck in the mud.
No.
It was just like it was really clumpy. So like the wheels, the wheels wouldn't get like super sunk in there, but you just couldn't like drive any further. And so, but it's like, I think there's a better route than this. I said, okay. And so we switched seats real quick. I was driving, so now he was driving. And then I said, all right, see if you can get out now. And so he pressed on the gas, and we got like all sorts of mud just like up and down. And I was like, oh, like this is a rental car. We should sleep in it. Like, it's gonna get muddy now. But then eventually, like we went in reverse. We got off that road, and then we got onto like a state highway. And then so it was like asphalt, and it was perfect. And then so we ended up getting a sunflower, and there's like, those famous Midwest storms all around. And we're like, all right, we just got to get this high point really quick. And so
it was like one of these Wizard of Oz type of moments. Where
like a super dark sky.
And it was profound. When you talk about a microburst, you could see it out there going, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
You just didn't want to get stuck in it. So we got out of the car real quick. And at every high point, we always make a cardboard sign with this.
Okay. Yeah.
And so, we got out the Kansas one, and it's like, we can't see it with our camera. So we quickly turned the car to where it's facing the big metal sculpture. And it says like Mountain Sunflower, Kansas. We quickly got our picture, and it's like storming like crazy. And so we got that done, and then quickly signed our names in the books. And I looked around to see if there were any geocaches right there. And then we quickly got back in the car and just like booked it back to Colorado. So.
Think of the violent storms being in the mountains. Probably our most violent one, or one of the most violent ones, was in Kansas, where it was flat.
Right. Yeah.
And I want to say, next day we went to a Rockies game, right?
No, we did Colorado. We did Mount Elbert, and then that evening we went back down to Denver. We went to a Rockies game.
Okay. So
that's fun.
Beginning trip.
Yeah, we're on the top of the highest point in the morning, and we're at the game drinking beer in the evening.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was a good experience. And then shifting farther north, Montana and Wyoming. Obviously these ones are pretty remote. Especially Wyoming. So with Montana, we've tried it twice. We haven't been able to reach the very top of it, but this year we're just going to go with the mountain guide and then try it from the froze to death plateau route on the north side. Even though it's going to be like class 4, class 5. What we wanted to do, we're like, you know what, I think we can do the class 3 on the southwest side with the southwest route. What we didn't really realize though was, one, how rocky it is as you get on top of sky tops, as you're getting a lot closer to the actual last part of the summit. But then two, it's not really a route that I would recommend anybody go and do, just because of when you even get up to like the slab, it's very exposed. Yeah, the mountain in general is very exposed itself. Just route, I wouldn't necessarily feel safe on it, especially like any rock fall or anything like that. But you do get awesome national park type views as you're walking in. You go past like Lady of the Lakes. And then you start going up towards sky tops, and then you have like Moose Lake, and that looks really cool and stuff like that. But then on this last trip, we were up there. We made a push for the summit on summit day, and as we're getting closer we're starting to go up the final big summit area, and so we're just below the slab, and we're going up. I'm not sure what's necessarily the best route people have been taking to kind of get up there, because the Croy of the route to me really is just below the slab, because you have this big slope, and then you have the slab directly in front of you. But at this point, you have to climb over a couple of different boulders that are at least 6 or 7 or maybe 8 feet tall. And if you slip, you're probably going to fall about 10 feet. And if you need any medical treatment or anything like that, you're either going to get a helicopter, or it's probably going to be about 15 hours to, get back down, go through the Silvergate area, and then maybe, try to get somewhere. And so we're up there. It's extremely windy and
very, very windy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I look back and I said, Dad, I don't think today's going to be summit day. I think this is our summit for today.
So we were planning to make a run for the summit. We were going to go for the summit. We were on our way to the summit, and the wind just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger. So we kind of looked at each other when we were facing one of these big rocks, and we kind of thought, probably not today. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about, because we've climbed other mountains out west and so forth, that this might have been what I consider our finest hour, because we were able to discern our situation and realize today's not the day. And we didn't let summit fever overtake us. We used some wisdom. So we started our way back down towards camp. And after a little bit, we look and we're thinking, where's our tent? And the tent is off.
Yeah.
And we look over to where some other people have been camping a few hundred yards away, and their tents are gone. And so we got up in the dark. We already had been climbing for a while to get up to where we were. So we come back down, and our tent is gone, and our gear that's with it. So we find it. It's maybe 100 yards away.
At least
100. Up against some rocks. We go to it. We're getting a little bit of precipitation, not a lot, but some. And we look at our tent, and one of our tent poles, fiberglass tent poles, is shattered. So we are a good 14 miles away from the car. We've been hiking for a while in the dark. We've been up for a while, and all of our gear's there, and we realized we can't stay here anymore because we got weather coming in. So we gathered up all of our stuff, and we needed to hike towards the car. And we needed to hike out 14 miles, which basically we did 2 days coming in, and we had to go out. But we had our headlamps with us and that type of stuff, so we started out. And I'm no spring chicken, but thank goodness we had learned to really try to get in shape to do this stuff when you go out west.
Yeah.
So we just started hiking with our 40-pound packs, and then it eventually got dark, and we kept going. But we made it out. We got to the car. We were able to sleep in the car that night. But again, I think that was one of our finest hours, because with all the challenges that we had, I mean, we were wet. We were trying to, it wasn't just rain. Sometimes it was hail coming down. But we climbed up towards the summit. We weren't that far away, came down, had to put our broken tent and stuff together, pack up, and then hike out 14 miles. It was pretty late when we got back to the car, but really proud of what we were able to do. And I think our skills from mountain climbing and our scouting really came into play that day. Yeah. And it worked out really well for us in the end.
And then even on top of that, like another summit pressure that we had was, if we would have summited that day, that would have been mountain number 48 for us. So that would have completed the lower 48. And I think the number of completers now is up to like 770 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So like we had that, like, thinking like, oh, we really got to get to summit. We got to get up there. And with this being like our second attempt of it, it's like, okay, like, we don't want to have to go do this like a third time. But no, that day we made the right decision turning around. So, it's hard when, like, we put all this effort into it, like on a multi-day effort getting up there and training before then. But we definitely made the right call. That was a long day, very long day.
Last year, I was 64 last year. And hiked out, felt great. I felt, I felt great that I was able to do it. I was tired, but I felt great that I was able to do it. And because we had put the work in ahead of time. There's no excuse for,
I was on, I had to do Whitney twice. I was weathered out the first time. And the second time, my husband and I decided to do the East Face route. We were going to rock climb up. And then we got to that right before that route starts. And I looked up and I saw this line of climbers and I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think today's the day to do that route. And we carried our ropes up and everything. And the guide that we were with said, that's okay. You made the right decision. It's always good to be conservative in the wilderness with your decision making. And so we did the Mountaineers route instead, which was very equally rewarding. But I don't go back. I guess that day I was like, oh, it would have been cool. We would have had those bragging rights to say that we did the East Face, but it didn't seem like the right thing that day. When I booked the trip, it seemed like the right thing months before.
Yeah.
So can you talk about your other summits, maybe some of the bigger ones that you did out west?
Definitely Wyoming for sure.
Yeah. Probably the toughest one so far, and I think probably will end up being our toughest one altogether, is Wyoming. And
wow.
Not necessarily because, the mountain itself, but it is remote. It really is remote.
Okay.
It is, what is it? How far in?
Nearly 40 miles round trip from the drop off.
That's from the drop off. Yeah, and we went through the Indian reservation, which took off about 10 miles, but it's not necessarily an easy hike. It is, it's very beautiful. Right where we get to do the camp for the summit day, but we went with a guide because it was just so far in there. We wanted to learn some skills. So it's very remote, and I wasn't in the shape that I probably should have been, and I think that's why it paid dividends for Montana, because I really put the effort in. But in Wyoming, and I had put in a fair amount of effort, but it wasn't to the extent I had before. But on summit day, you still got to go over what's that gap called? The glacier.
I can't think about it.
Yeah. Anyway, partway up on the summit, you've got to cross over a glacier, and this one has a gap in it, and snow bridge. That's what you call it. So sometimes the snow bridge is intact, and sometimes it's melted out. So we went with a guide on that, but on summit day, pretty steep. We were all roped up, and we were doing all fours with an ice axe and crampons. Yeah. But it's kind of like, this is like cool stuff for a couple guys. And so we're doing it. We're all roped up. So our guide goes up ahead and he anchors in, and then we're going up and we didn't get out of bed as early as he'd like us to. And we weren't sleeping in. It just took us longer to do it. So we were pressed for time. There's a turnaround time on that mountain to get it done. And I feel good and so forth, but I do have a couple stints in me from earlier on in my youth, not eating as well as I should have. And so we're going along the top, and we got to hustle. We've got to hustle. So I'm really moving. And that's the one time that I kind of felt like, I don't know if I should be pushing myself quite this hard. But we did. We made it to the top, and that was great. But it was like that was our third day. Yeah. That was our third day to get in. So it took 3 days to get to the top.
Wow.
And then on the way down, we went through the snow bridge area again and went down did some glacier work. And then we got down to the rocks, but all the rocks were wet. And I was exhausted. And I was going down, and the soil is a little bit sandy. It's a bit sandy and rocky and so forth. And they were wet. And I was pooped, and I slipped. Even though I had a helmet on, I still did a face plant on a rock, a big rock. And so I kind of checked myself on the ground and says, well, nothing's busted. And then I look up. I didn't know what my face looked like, but I knew I hit my head. And then these guys look at me, and my face is black and blue, and I didn't look too good. And Tim took my pack But we were pretty much at least getting where it's a little bit of flatter terrain.
Yeah.
And made it back to camp and ended up being okay in the end. But that was, I was exhausted. I was pooped on our third day. It was a hard 2 days to get in there, and then it's summit day. That's not an easy day. So that was the most challenging one for us. And I think the only way I could have been easier would have been if I was just better shape, even though I was in good shape, but I needed to be in top advanced excellent shape for that.
That sounds strenuous.
That's a tough one. That really was. Now, I can't imagine another one, maybe outside of Alaska, that would be tougher. But in the lower 48, boy, that was hard because it's just so far in, and I'm just exhausted when it's time just to actually start for the summit.
Rainier was better for us, for sure, than this one.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. You kind of walk from the Paradise parking lot, and you just start the trail right there. And then your journey up Rainier starts. There's no 20-mile walk-in.
You were asking about experiences, and one of them, and I can just remember, we were camping, and I believe, we did Camp Muir the first night, and then the second one was it Edmonds Glacier?
Yeah, we were on that glacier.
LA Glacier, Edmonds Glacier, something like that. And it's in the afternoon, and the next day is the summit day. Tim and I are sitting in our tent, on the edge of our tent, beautiful day, looking out over this ice fall. It's his 22nd birthday. And for an hour, we just sit at the edge of the tent, and we're just a father and son talking and looking over this creation that God put together that was just incredible. Yeah. And I was just thinking, what an experience for us to be able to share as a father and son, and at our ages that maybe father and sons don't necessarily have the best relationships. We're best friends. And because of all these different type of things that we did. And I'll never forget, that was your 22nd birthday. And we were just sitting on this glacier way, way up up on Mount Rainier.
Yeah.
That was wonderful.
Was that the Ingraham Flats?
Could have been. Could have been.
Did you go with a guide?
Yes.
Alpine Ascents.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I went with IMG, and the first night we stayed at Camp Muir, and then the second night we stayed on Ingraham Flats. And that was, I think I had a similar experience. I did it by myself, but I went with an all-women team. And at the time I was coming from the Army. And so it felt really good just to be around some other, goal-oriented females. And we all just sat in that same location, just looking down. And it's at that point where you can no longer see the parking lot, but you can see the Cascades. And that's when you really feel like, okay, I'm on this mountain now. I'm not just hiking up. This is real.
One thing about that mountain that we talked about was obviously from the parking lot, you're starting to climb right away. I mean, it's not you're not hiking in, you're hiking up. And so the next day after we get off the mountain, we stay in Seattle. And since Tim is into aviation, we went to the Museum of Flight in Seattle.
That's right.
It's got all these great airplanes and aeronautical things. And so obviously we're sore, and we're very, very sore. In fact, when we would see a set of stairs to climb, look at each other and start crying.
I know.
Like, we want to go up these steps.
I was the same way.
We're so sore. But it's one of the more comical things, but it was an enjoyable day, but there was no way that we wanted to climb anything.
Yeah.
I know. I remember that. And, and good for you guys for going to a museum the next day, because I stayed in bed the next day.
Good move.
Number one, because I was sore. But two, my face was so blistered that I didn't want to show it to anybody, because I didn't listen when the guides told us to reapply sunscreen, especially on my lips. And I saw the guides putting sunscreen inside their ears, and I'm like, oh, that is excessive. I don't need to do that. Well, I did because the skin inside of my ears started peeling and it was coming out. And then I had blisters all over my lips and my nose. It was so bad. My face was probably double the size it normally is. And that's the second reason that I didn't want to leave the hotel room.
So how we ended up getting down Rainier was when we got down to Camp Muir. I kept asking the guide, hey, can we glissade now? Can we glissade?
Oh yeah, that's the best part.
He's like, okay, we're below the camp. Okay, now you can if you want. And so it's like, oh yes, getting rid of a couple thousand feet pretty quickly.
Yeah,
Great
that was
stuff.
awesome. That was awesome. I remember going up to Camp Muir and see people doing that on their way down. I was like, oh, I can't wait to do that. And then I was so out of energy by that time when we came down, but it did feel really good to do that. And I'll give one last Rainier story. But when we were still at Camp Muir, we were watching people come back from their summit. And they were exhausted, and we heard them saying things like, oh, I'm never doing that again, or like, that is my last mountain ever. And, that was like my first mountain. I was so excited to summit. I had done all this research on the mountain. I read all the books ever on Rainier. And I was like, oh, how could they say that? That I can't wait to go up to the top. I was the same way on the way down. I was just like, never again. Of course, that wasn't the truth. I've done mountains since. But yeah, it was naive. It was naive of me to think that they were just being pessimistic. But the thing is, it's just a long day, that summit day.
Yeah.
Because they make you go all the way back.
Yeah. We lucked out when we were flying out to Seattle from Indiana. The pilot says, you guys going to the Northwest are really in for a treat. We had really, really good weather for a week. So we just worked out. So we didn't need to wear double boots while we were climbing, and we didn't always have a real heavy gear on or whatever. It was just like when we were sitting on the edge of the tent, long sleeve t-shirts on and kind of sitting up there. We just really, really were very fortunate. So probably Montana last year was the payback for having really good weather up on Rainier.
Yeah. So what about Mount Hood? Can you talk about that?
Yeah,
that's one of our favorites.
Yeah, it's
really.
Been so, yeah.
Because you talk about leaving from the parking lot. Well, and on Mount Hood, we actually were able to take a snowcat up to the top of the Palmer ice field or snow field to the top of the ski lift, and so you kind of start there, really. So it is. But it does get steep in a hurry. But the geology and the geography is really, really neat. And we're kind of, after just a little while, we're actually climbing through the throat of a volcano.
Wow.
And then as we're climbing out, it gets really steep. And this is where you're, again, crampons and ice axes, and we got our guide, and we didn't do a lot of guides. We just with Mount Rainier and Mount Hood so far.
Mm-hmm.
That last part where it's really steep, it was our guide, and he got up there, and then Tim went, and then I was right behind Tim. And I can just remember as we're going up, his boot is right in front of my face as I'm going up and putting the ice axe in and kicking my crampons in and putting the ice in and cramping. And it was just that really neat thing, but we're able to climb that mountain without the fatigue of a Rainier or the fatigue of a Wyoming. So that one I wouldn't mind doing again, just because it was really neat. It was technical. It was challenging for us. You got to kind of walk through this throat of volcano, and you could smell the sulfur kind of coming up in different places where you're walking through. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And we weren't wiped out at the end of that. We were probably gone 8-9 hours,
something like that. Yeah, I started climbing around 11:30 midnight or maybe a little bit after midnight.
I think
we were at the top by 6.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. We were back down by 10, 11, 12, something like that, late morning or whatever, and then
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
that was not.
Yeah, and the cool part about that was the first time. So we had done Hood twice, but like once like actually summited. The first time we did it, we got turned around because it was too windy up near the top.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the
Okay.
entire the mountain guiding company on that mountain, they said we're not taking anybody past right where the sulfur stuff is or anything like that.
Devil's Kitchen, I think is what they called it.
And
Okay.
they said it's just not a good day. There's a whole bunch of wind shear, everything. You just get thrown off the mountain. And so our guide was like, "I'm so sorry, guys." We're like, "It's not your fault. It's just Mother Nature." And so when we came back to do Hood, so they have a bunch of mountain guides that do that. And we found out like, okay, Brad is your guide, and I was like, that's the same guy that we had last time. So he didn't know about it because he was guiding somewhere else like earlier that day on another mountain, and then he came and he's like, all right, we're totally getting up to the top of that mountain. So it was a full circle experience. It was the exact same guy that we had, and so it was a blast, like being able to just like be on the top with our guide. And that was just a good quality experience for sure.
Cool.
I'm originally
awesome.
from Oregon as well, so it's kind of
Okay.
like this is like my home mountain, kind of in a way. And
What route did you do on Mount Whitney?
the normal one,
The Whitney Portal one.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this is probably where one of our most unusual stories comes from, and this is not actually on the mountain, but it's in the parking lot. And as you know, Whitney's about 11 miles in and about 11 miles out. We were going to do it all in one day, and you got to get a permit to go in. You can't take off before midnight or whatever. So we slept in the car and then got up really early to make it in one day. So I don't know if you want to tell about this, or we could do a combination of this, but
That's fine. Combination's fine.
we're getting ready in the parking lot. And it's dark. It's very dark. Maybe about 1 a.m. is my guess. And so we got the hatchback up, and we're kind of getting our gear, and then it's cold, but it's not free. I mean, it's not frigid, and so we're getting our gear on and so forth. And then I'm in the driver's seat of the car, getting my pants on, I guess.
And we have our headlamps on too.
Yeah. And Tim's in the back. He got the hatch up, and he's going through his stuff, and then all of a sudden, he goes, "Dad, Dad, 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 Dad." And he runs really quick around the car and gets in the passenger side and shuts the door. And I'm going, "What?" He goes, "There's a bear out there." And I go, "What? There's a bear out there." And I look, and our hatchback is open.
Oh, no.
And I'm looking back there, and this bear has one paw up on the bumper, another paw up on the bumper, and his nose and his head's inside the back of our car, sniffing around. And I'm thinking, "Tim!" And so we were kind of freaking out, and we were just praying, "All right, just stay back there, stay back there." And he eventually did.
Yeah.
But this bear had his head inside our car. Yogi Bear had his head inside the car looking for a picnic basket. He didn't find one. He wasn't that interested, and he eventually kind of went across the parking lot to some other people who were getting ready to climb, and he was over there with some college kids, and then the bear's kind of looking around, and they're taking pictures of the bear.
The bear's not afraid. It's just a small black bear, and the kids are laughing, and they're like, like the bear's kind of like confused, and it's like, what's going on? Welcome to California.
As soon as you guys said that you had a story in the parking lot, I'm like, I bet this involves a bear. Because I remember when I was going up Whitney, I would hear stories of people that, we were passing or passed us say like, "Hey, watch out, there's bears in the parking lot." One of them opened my door. Like they put their claws underneath the handle, lifted it and opened it. Yes. Well, it's like when you came back down, did you go to the restaurant at the portal?
We went to a pizza place that evening.
I know that pizza place in Lone Pine. Yeah, that's a good one.
We went in there, and I was like, "Dad, I'm starving right now. I want to just get an entire pizza for myself." And so we got like a couple of big pizzas, and we just ate pizza for the next 3 days.
Yeah, we did eat all that. And then you look around the restaurant and you go, hey, we just passed those people on the trail early this morning or this afternoon. And they're eating pizza as well.
Yeah. Well, I had to do Whitney twice because the first time we got weathered out. So I've been to Lone Pine twice, and I think each time my husband and I have probably tried out every restaurant there except for that one. I think it's a Chinese restaurant that has a carousel in front of it. We haven't gone there. That's the only one we didn't go to, but I have been to that pizza place. It's really good. But I was going to say there's a restaurant at the Whitney Portal, and their garbage cans are like very secure for that reason. They I guess, are used to being fed in that area, so they keep coming back.
Good grub.
Yeah, right. Wow, that's funny, man. That came so close to you guys. It was in your car.
Oh, man, I look back, I can still see him today. Both paws on the bumper, his head inside, sniffing around. And I'm thinking, Tim! Oh.
We've had so many animal encounters like that. Even like Utah, we were walking past a moose that was just, mooching on some
He was right in the trail. And so we weren't going to go past the moose, and so we detoured around it. But, big antlers and it's in Utah. You think about mooses being further north, but there he was.
That and then when you get over the saddle and then you go around the backside to get up, I don't know if there's like ranching back there or something, but you have a whole bunch of sheep, and then you have like a sheep dog that's running around, and that was neat. Yeah.
Wow. Oh, cool. And then of course you saw the horses at Mount Rogers.
Yeah, that, and then we got a nice welcome from the state bird of Minnesota, the mosquito, as we were going up Eagle Peak or Eagle Mountain, and we're like, what's going on? And
they're brutal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think going across the country, we got to see so many different parts of the country, not only geology-wise and geography, but culturally as well.
Yeah,
we got to do it together, and it was just a great experience to learn so much about our diverse and beautiful country, and get to do it together. It was it's been an awesome experience. We're not done. We're scheduled to do Montana again this year. We're going to do with a guide, and this time we are going to have to learn some additional rope skills.
Okay.
To be able to climb a little bit of vertical rock. Mm-hmm. And I think that'd be great, because I think when we're now at the part we've done being roped up and harnessed and glacier traversing and that type of stuff. Now we're going to do a little bit of verticals, not a lot, but a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then we still got Hawaii to do. And then as far as Alaska goes, Tim's pretty motivated to go out and climb that and do some other stuff. I think I'm going to pass on it. It's about a 3-week deal.
It is.
And it's an expensive proposition. Yes, we could probably do it, but I've got being part of a family, I've got other obligations and things to consider. So I think I'm going to be good with 48 or 49. This guy may not be done until he's done the highest point of every continent.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Oh, cool. It's an expensive endeavor, and you have to have like 3 weeks that you can get off of work, which is probably a bigger challenge than the money, Yeah. Do you have any favorite outdoor adventure or mountain climbing podcasts, documentaries, or books that you recommend?
The one for me that comes to mind for sure, I don't know if I would consider it like a documentary. I don't know if he does this anymore, Bear Grylls, like he does like the Bear Grylls in the wild, like, where he's different situations. That's just fun and like interesting to learn about.
Yeah.
And then like, I know like National Geographic has some really good mountaineering, different things that like on Mount Everest or, any climbing the Himalayas, like that's really good as well. I don't know about you.
Yeah. I like those too.
Yeah, I kind of relied on Tim in a lot of ways as far as research goes. I look at some stuff. One thing that I think in retrospect we could have done maybe a little bit better is shared our information almost real time with high pointer sites and so forth. So people can always have information. One of the legacies that we always left is we would always take a piece of cardboard with us and write the name of the state on it.
Okay.
And then we might, I don't know if you put some contact information on the back, but, and then we would leave it at the summit. So when people are getting their pictures taken, they could hold up and say, okay, this is where we're at today. But the neat thing about it is Tim would go online and take a look and say, hey, there's our sign and someone else is holding it up. And then there's another sign and someone else is holding it up.
It just said on the back, like, take a picture of the sign and like tag, my @handle and blah, blah, blah on Twitter. And, it would just like.
That's cool.
Cool. Yeah. So when you're at the top of, as an example, North Dakota, and the background of it is it's all sky or whatever, that you can't really tell on what summit it is from another place.
Yep.
So, but you pull out the sign and then, okay, this is when we were here and there. So we have those from every place that we've been, whether it's Florida or Rainier. We always pull it out of the back.
Wow.
And so that was something that was great. But again, in retrospect, I think in leaving some real-time information, because sometimes we would take the best information we could find, and though it's pretty accurate, sometimes it wouldn't quite be exactly what we were looking for.
Yeah.
Okay.
We didn't really do that, but that's what I would encourage other people to do, is to share that information real time as soon as you do it. That would be helpful for us. Benches are everywhere. I mean, most places we would find a high pointers bench.
Yeah.
Not every place, like in the public lands or the national parks or whatever, but most places we'd always see a bench, which was kind of neat. That way we knew that we made it, whether we could find the marker or not.
Yeah.
We made it.
Yeah.
And they're having a High Pointers convention this year in July at Brasstown Bald.
Yeah, looking
the
forward.
Convention isn't going to be on the High Point. It's they rented out some place around that, but I'm going to go to that. It's going to be my first convention, so I'm excited.
Look forward to seeing you there. That'll be awesome.
What are the benefits of high pointing that you've experienced?
Achieving a goal, I think, and following through is a real benefit. I think for us, doing it together, I can't think of a better way for a father and son to share in something that's went on for several years.
Yeah.
And we continue to do that, and it's something that only the two of us have experienced together in that regard. So it's kind of really a really neat thing. Another benefit is, hey, I'm 65 now. And because of this guy dragging me up to all these high points, it has forced me to get out there and lift weights and run and swim and a 40-pound bag of fertilizer on my back of my backpack and climb every hill that I could find around here and biking. And so I'm in good shape. Even after I fell out of a tree and busted all kinds of bones, arms, pelvis, nose, ribs, that type of stuff, that I don't have any ill effects from that experience. And I attribute it to doing this with Tim over a prolonged period of time. And I feel great. So I think for me, those are some of the benefits. I don't know about you. You probably got your own.
I think definitely just being able to just get out in the wilderness, but then also too, like my dad said, being able to just like bond together and battle through these experiences together has just brought us so much closer. And it's definitely just been a blessing for sure.